of Rabbi Allouche. Come on up.
All right, I know that we're running late, but since I've been told to speak words of wisdom, I think 5 times tonight, my expectations are high. They have to be words of wisdom. I don't know if we can write that before I speak. I'll let the public judge afterwards, but words of wisdom really echo one of the symbols of wisdom in society, and that is professors. So I thought of a story about a Professor Avi Nisri. He's a professor at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And you know, some professors, not all, but some professors tend to be a little aloof, disconnected. So this professor was on his bus on the way back home one day. And then he realizes, wow, I forgot my address. I don't even know where I live. He gets off the bus and has an idea. He says, I'll stop one of the children over here in the streets, and I'll ask the child if he knows Professor Avi Nisri. I'm sure he knows. Children over here. And I'll ask him where he lives. So he stops one of the children. He says, so, dear child, do you know where Professor Avi Nisri lives? The child looks back at the adult, the professor, and he says, yes, I know where Professor Nisri lives. But Abba, Daddy, can't you recognize me? And in fact, the children tonight is the source of our pride, the source of our wisdom, and to me they symbolize the message of Sukkot. What is Sukkot? What is the sukkah outside? What is this all about? To put it in short, as we said, because we're running out of time, Sukkot, I believe, is teaching every single one of us that even though we may be in the loneliness of the desert, in the darkness of the night, in the coldness of the winter, God is there outside, in the hut, in wrapping each and every one of us with His divine warmth and inspiration. This year has not been an easy year, we all know this. Waves of recession, challenges, obstacles have shaken our essence, have shaken our foundations. But we have to remember the message of Sukkot. It may be cold, it may be dark, but God is out there in wrapping each and every one of us, tendering our hearts and souls. You know the story about the atheist father who wanted to teach his son, his 5-year-old son, that there is no God in the world. So when his son is asleep, he goes up to his bed, writes on a big piece of paper, God is nowhere. His son wakes up in the morning, and the son is just 5 years old, he doesn't know how to read much yet. He looks up at the piece of paper and he reads, God is now here. Not nowhere, is now here. The message of Sukkot is indeed that although the world may shout out loud that God is nowhere, we know as Jews, for the essence of our history is that despite the expulsions, despite the prosecutions, we knew, always knew, that God is now here in the darkness of the night and in the coldness of the winter. That is, by the way, the brilliance of any brilliant person. Superstars are born because they know how to fight through pain. You remember that day, June 19th, 1997, Michael Jordan had 102 degrees of fever. He was battling the flu. And in the 4th quarter, he took over the game against the Utah Jazz, won the game for the Chicago Bulls. That is what a Michael Jordan is about. That is what a Jew is about. And this is what Sukkot is about. And I'll conclude with a story if you don't mind. This is a story about another little boy who was just 7 years old. His name was Yehonatan Eibsch. It's a true story. He lived in Poland. He was known all over his shtetl his village, that here is a prodigy coming. So the king of Poland wanted to hear about him, and he said, I'd like to meet this young boy. And he said, I'll give him a test to see if he's a real prodigy. Let him walk to my palace, find his way, without anyone telling him what the direction is. So his father agrees to the deal, and he says, go, Yehonatan, find your way to the palace, the king wants to meet you. He finds his way to the palace miraculously. The king is stunned, invites him to his chambers, and then he says to him, my dear Yehonatan, you have proven that you are indeed a prodigy. But I have one question for you. How did you get here? Yehonatan said, look, simple. No GPSs at the time. But there are people in the streets. I asked them where the palace is. But then the king said, 1 second. It's not as simple as that. What if one person told you to go north, the other person told you to go south? What would you have done? He said, then I would have called the third person and gone according to the majority. So the king catches him in that trap. And he says, my dear little boy, Yehonatan, then I have a big question for you. You're a Jew, right? He says, yes. He says, well, the majority of the world is Christian. You just said you have to go according to the majority. Where are you? Where are your brethren? Convert to Christianity. And Yehonatan, with his brilliance, answered, looked at the king, and he said, my dear king, I go according to the majority where in the streets, when things are very foggy. But if I stand here in the palace, right across you, my royal highness, and the majority tells me I am not in the king's palace, I will not follow them, because I know with all my heart that I am here in your palace, facing the mightiest king of the world. The majority then doesn't count. My dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are in the royal palace. The king is right in front of our eyes, shining through our little children. And it is time to internalize the message of Sukkot and understand that wherever we are, whatever we may do, whichever wave may hit us, we remain in the palace, we remain in the Sukkah. Our children are the dearest and the nearest to us. And it is time that we embrace our royalty once and for all. Chag Sameach.